an interesting subject for me, and I have always tried to do a lot of researches at my own. So what I'm going to put across today in front of you in terms of also the presentation, and there will be many things which I'll be sharing out of presentation to which is not there in the presentation, which would further reinforce the idea on which we are going to speak upon. That is, did Mughals made India richer? Rather than rich, we should say that did Mughals made India richer? Because yes, everyone acknowledges that India was rich that time when Mughals came to India, but there is also a claim by large Mughal fan club which says that no, Mughals were the one who stayed back in India and worked upon making India even more richer than what it was earlier. So now you can see onto the screen that there are two images, and why I put across these two images is for a very specific reason. The first image is depiction of the Deccan famine, the Great Deccan famine, which occurred in 1632. It's the same period when the Taj Mahal was commissioned to be built. So below you see the image of the Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal is something what everyone tries to put from the Mughal fan club and say that, hey, we gave you such a great, wonderful architecture called Taj Mahal. It is so beautiful, it is so glorious, and even government of India still makes a lot of revenues out of it. But then the question arises that this Taj Mahal was built, but at on cost of what? So it was at the cost of something what you are seeing on the top, the image of the Great Deccan famine. So as per the records of the primary sources, it said that it was around 4.18 crore silver rupees which was required to build the Taj Mahal. And at the same time, in 1632, we got across the Great Famine of Deccan, which, as per the estimate, the Dutch estimate, surmounts to 7.4 million people were killed because of the famine. So you can just imagine that how many people would have been fed through that 4.8 crore silver rupees, but our great Mughal emperor chose otherwise. And there are many other facets to the Taj Mahal as well. If one looks into that whether it should be attributed completely to Mughals or not, then the things arises that yes, our people, the Indian people, died because of the cost which was incurred to build the Taj Mahal. Also, it was all the Indian resources. The stone was Indian, the site was Indian, and even the land was given by the land on which it was built was also an given by Indian ruler. So I have failed to understand that what exactly is the Mughal contribution even to the Taj Mahal. So we can consider it as a prologue of whole of a talk, and let me further move on. And where upon I will be focusing on breaking a lot of myths around the Mughal arrival to India, and it starts off with Babur itself. That they say that Babur came to India to make us richer, and he stayed back because he loved India. And there's so many fantasies and fiction which runs around the subject. But if we pick the primary sources, then the story is very different. What should be the primary source for understanding Babur? Definitely, the primary source for understanding Babur should be none other than Baburnama itself. So Baburnama has something very different to offer than what our Mughal fan club tries to portray. Now I'll take you through the so this is basically the basic lineage of the Mughal empire. What you see, it starts with the Babur, then Humayun, then Akbar, Jahangir, and so on and on. So this I have just put across for a quick reference so that if anyone wants to relate to a certain period, again the same thing. Now, as I said, that why Babur came to Bharat and never returned. The common narrative is, unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay back in India and consider her as own motherland. He was invited by Rana Sanga to fight against Ibrahim Lodi. Babur was not a jihadi warrior, rather he was secular. But the truth is something very otherwise. Unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay because he had lost everything back in the homeland. There was easy revenue which is floating from the docile people of Indian people or the Indian subjects, and access of abundant wealth that existed in India. Babur had asked for help from Rana Sanga, not actually Rana Sanga had asked for help from Babur. Babur was if you further even go and dig deeper into the Babarnama, you will even find that Babur was absolutely a jihadi warrior and there was nothing called secular within him. Now, moving on, let's collect all the facts from Babarnama till his journey to India. So it was in 1494 that he became the ruler of Fargana, which is the modern Uzbekistan, at the age of 12. And this comes straight away on the page number 1 of the any translated edition of Babarnama. You will find that this is the date. Then the numbers what you see onto the left, uh, these are the numbers which you can relate with the bullet points which I'm trying to speak about. Then in May 1497, Babur besieged Samarkand and he considered it to be one of his biggest achievements. And he further bestowed a lot of ranks and a lot of favors to the Beyks of Samarkand. This is exactly the same phenomenon with all the Mughals were doing even in India. When they were conquering India, when they were going on to rampage of the Rajputana, at the same time they were giving a lot of favors. They were passing on a lot of ranks to the Rajputs too. So the stories, the later Mughals were inheriting from what Babur did right from beginning at the age of 12. In 1498, that is point number 3, it's happening around Fargana. Babur lost home to, as the rebels favored his brother Jahangir. In the process, he had to retire to from Samarkand too. He was on the way to get back Fargana, but while he was on the way to get back the territories of what rebels were looking to give over to Jahangir, he lost Samarkand too. And this comes on to the folio. I'm trying to quote more in terms of folio rather than page number of Babarnama. Folio is nothing but the page numbers of the respective manuscript from which the whole book was translated. So it was in June 1498, Babur, when Babur recovers his home, but again he loses it. In July 28, 1500, Babur again takes Samarkand. So again, these all references are coming from Babarnama itself. On July 17, 1501, Babur loses Samarkand again to Muhammad Shaybani. Now, I have put a note over there. You can read that Babur had to marry off his sister to Shaybani as a peace deal for a safe passage. Samarkand, his lifelong obsession, was thus lost again. Then he tried to reclaim Fargana, but lost the battle there also, and escaping with a small band of followers, he wandered the mountains of Central Asia and took refuge with the hill tribes. Now, you can see that whole journey of Babur is running back and forth from Fargana to Samarkand. Interestingly, I have also put across the lineage of lineage of the Babur. He draws the lineage from the Taimur. Now, there are a few interesting citations of various historians, and including Babur itself, which I have put along the image. You can see an image of a chess king. So Babur was like a king, or like a king on a chessboard, moved from place to place and buffeted about like pebbles on a seashore. This is what Firishta is quoting. So this was the situation of Babur. He was just going to and fro from Fargana to Samarkand, and he was not very stationary at any place. He was not at all established. Coming to the 7th bullet point, July 7, 1502 to June 26, 1503, Babur takes refuge in Tashkent, where his maternal uncle ruled, but he found place full of distress. And if one can read, it's clearly written that is there one cruel turn of fortune's will unseen by me? Is there a pang, a grief my wounded heart has missed? This is what Babur is quoting in Babarnama in folio 194. So it kind of takes a case very clear that Babur was not having a good life at all. He was just thrown out of a place. He wins something, he gets a kingdom, loses other. So this goes on and on. And you can read that what Babur says about his stay at Tashkent. He says that during my stay in Tashkent, I endured much poverty and humiliation, no country or hope of one. This is what Babur is quoting in Babarnama. So what we draw out of these points, it's very clear that Babur was having a very stressful life. He was not at peace at all. He was not at all a king who had a permanent kingdom. Now, in 1505, he writes during his campaign towards Hindustan, my desire for Hindustan had been constant. It was in the month of Shaban, the sun brings an Aquarius. And he further mentions that he was just all dying to go to Hindustan from Kabul. It comes on the folio 269 of Babarnama. And on the left, the image what you see is kind of the journey what Babur made from Kabul to India. In 1526, Babur finally got succeeded of conquering Hindustan in fifth raid. So it was a fifth raid of Babur when he defeated Ibrahim Lodi. Babur acknowledges in Babarnama that Kandahar and Kabul were running in extreme crisis and it needed wealth of Hindustan. So he was coming to Hindustan to safeguard Kandahar and Kabul. He had no intention to do any good to India. Further, Babur mentions himself to be the third Tramontana conqueror of Hindustan, first being Mahmud. It also gives an indication of his pursuit to conquer Hindustan, also because of the jihadi pursuit of all the Tramontana conquerors, Mahmud being the first one. In further, if you go into folio 291 of Babarnama, one can observe his hatred for India culturally and climatically. He's not at all fond of India. He goes on to bring on a lot of disgust about whole of a cultural phenomenon which goes on in India. He even quips about the climate what India has. Further, in folio 291 and 292 of Babarnama, Babur also talks about advantages of India, but majorly it is on how easily he can draw the revenues. Babur mentions of abundant gold and silver. He also talks about easily available workforce. So, which king or a person will like to give away the free hand to the gold and silver which is flowing all around and also the easily available workforce? Now, I have put two snippets. These are the snippets from Babarnama itself, the translated version, where he is talking about the revenues he was able to generate from the docile Indian subjects. And if one refers to the understanding of revenues which have been presented by Erskine, which was published in the Memoirs of 1826 AD, but he further did some correction in 1854, where he puts a number which is just amazingly used. This revenue meant in 1528 for king who had lost whole core of his Samraj in Samarkand. Kabul was weak and was struggling for his existence. So now the question arises that, okay, he made some revenues. It's good, every king makes revenues. So what was happening to those revenues? If we really put it across to Indian subjects, or this went somewhere else. So Babarnama again gives a very different story altogether. So if we read on folio 294 of Babarnama, Babur writes, suitable money gifts were bestowed from treasury on whole army to every tribe. There was Afghan, Hazara, Arab, Baluch, etc. to according to its position. Every trader and student, indeed every man who had come with the army, took ample portion and share of wardness and the gifts and the largest. And indeed to the whole various train of relations and the younger children went masses of red and white, gold and silver of plenishing, that is furniture and furnishings, jewels and slaves. So this was what Babur was doing to the wealth or the revenues that he had generated. Further, he even mentions that valuable gifts were sent for the various relations in Samarkand, Khurasan, Kashgar and Iraq. To holy men belonging to Samarkand and Khurasan went offerings vowed to God, so to Makkah and Medina. Babur also disbursed lots of money in Afghanistan. He writes, he gave one Saruki silver for every soul in the country of Kabul and valley side of Varsak in Afghanistan, man and woman, born and free of age or non-age. So till now, till folio 294, I assume that no one can even make out if Babur was really doing anything good to India. I really feel astonished at times that what source, primary or secondary, people are even trying to quote to justify that Babur was here to make India richer. Now, if we read the folio 353 of Baburnama, he mentions he mentions not Babur always wanted to be buried in Kabul. This clearly speaks of his non-connectivity with India. Had he been a little connected to India, he would have chosen to stay at Agra, where he wouldn't have had any problem. On the left, you can see the Babur's tomb in Kabul. Now, also, as per the folio 353 of Baburnama, presents of jackets and silk dresses of honor of gold and silver, of household furnishing and various goods were given to those of Andizan, Uzbekistan, and to those who had come from Suk and Halsar, the places whither we had gone landless or homeless. Gifts of the same kind were given to the servants of Kurban and Shaikal and the peasants of Kahamad in Afghanistan. So the exorbitant wealth what Babur has generated, it was not for India at all. Now the second myth, what is generally propagated by people, is that Babur was invited by Rana Sanga, and it was Rana Sanga who later betrayed Babur when he didn't choose to fight on the Babur's side. But the story is somewhat very different according to any source if one carefully cares to inspect into. Generally, people end up quoting Professor G.N. Sharma's work, Mewar and the Mughal Emperors, where he has given a slight hint of Rana Sanga actually asking Babur that yes, he will give his help. And he also said, talks about an agreement between Babur and Rana Sanga. But truth is something otherwise. Let me stress upon the points. It must be noted that Babur was so caught up that he was not writing his diary during this period. So Baburnama eventually doesn't talk about whether Babur wrote to Rana Sanga or not. It is nowhere mentioned in Baburnama. But Baburnama does give a mention of Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, and Ibrahim Lodi's uncle, inviting Babur, the ruler of Kabul, to invade India. This I have sourced from Muslim Civilization India by S.M. Ikram, edited by Ansley T. Embry in the chapter 6. So this is again the same thing what also comes across in the translator's note of Baburnama. It has been mentioned that about Daulat Khan appealing Babur to come to India to defeat Ibrahim, while translator had no primary source for Rana Sanga inviting Babur. This and Ahmad Yadgar was the person who has been mentioned to be speaking about Daulat Khan appealing Babur to come to India and defeat Ibrahim Lodi. So there is a lack of reference for Rana Sanga inviting Babur in Baburnama. Now let's look into the work of G.N. Sharma, which has eventually been the favorite book for anyone to stress upon the fact that yes, Babur was invited by Rana Sanga. Historian G.N. Sharma mentions of Rajput's chroniclers. He explains, and ironically, he also explains that why it is foolish to even think of that one of the strongest ruler of India would invite weak Babur for the support. So the work of G.N. Sharma itself has got glitches in 2 paragraphs itself. I will recommend everyone to go through the book Mewar and the Mughal Emperors, where G.N. Sharma is speaking about Babur and Rana Sanga relation. In one of the paragraphs, he gives a clear indication that yes, Babur had asked for the help from Rana Sanga. He talks about a kind of agreement what he's proposing to Rana Sanga about the division of the land about Agra and Delhi. But in the next paragraph, he starts off with saying that puts a juxtaposition that yes, Rana Sanga replied that of giving support to Babur, but there is no primary or secondary source to establish this claim. Interestingly, Sharma also explained, as I already said, also explained that why it is even foolish to believe that Rana Sanga would have asked for help from Babur. Unlike other invaders, Babur chose to stay back in India because he had lost everything back homeland. Easy revenue in India from docile people was available. Access to abundant wealth that existed nowhere else. Babur had asked for help from Rana Sanga, and there is no primary source for the agreement. So there is no point of even saying that yes, Rana Sanga betrayed Babur. This is what Farishta, I am very fond of quoting Farishta most of the times. Farishta says that Babur left himself stripped so bare by his far-flung largesse that he was nicknamed Kalandar. So you can understand that Babur had actually nothing to give to India but only to take from India. Now, after having established these facts about Babur, let's now look a bit into Akbar. Akbar is often said to be the most secular of all the rulers. Everyone goes on to say that perhaps Akbar did most to reinforce Hindu-Muslim unity, and he was one of the most tolerant, and he did amazing economic reforms. But again, the primary sources speak something very different. The primary sources have very different story to tell. This is what was written on the coin of Akbar in the early days. Anyone who is versed with the script can check it out. It can be vetted, and I will recommend the Mughal fan club to really look into this. That what the coin is saying. It one side of the coin says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, while the second side of the coin says that Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar Ghazi Badishah. So I don't at all understand that how can Ghazi be secular? One who is so fond of being called Ghazi, one who is so fond of embossing Kalima onto the coin, how can he be secular at all? One interesting aspect is that the coin, what most of the Mughal fan clubs show you is a Ram Sita coin, but this coin was arrived only in 1605 AD, while Akbar died in 1605. So there are even sources which claim that it was not actually issued by Akbar but by Amar Singh. So I don't see even a basic point to understand that why Babur was not Ghazi. Now there's a claim which runs around that Akbar was actually given the title of Akbar. Akbar is not his real name by a Hindu businessman. Few people say that it was given by a Rajput ruler. But if one looks into Akbarnama, he himself had given the title of Dara-i-Akbar, calling himself the great ruler, and during the coronation. So again, this is also a myth around that the people were so pleased by Akbar that they just started calling him Akbar from very beginning. And this particular aspect of Akbar, calling himself Akbar, leads to a very interesting point. He was a person of a very narcissistic character who always wanted to celebrate himself a lot. He always had the desire of leading the people, and that was in the later days that he goes on to create a religion or the cult called Dine Ilahi. It was only because when all the Muslim clerics were agitated by Akbar that you cannot be caliph. Caliph is someone else. Then he thought that okay, why not I be the starter of a religion itself, a faith itself, and I will be the caliph. So coming back to the economic reforms part of Akbar, did Akbar really make the economic reforms? If I am to refer to S.M. Ikram work again, the Muslim civilization in India, it clearly speaks about that Akbar's taxes were highest. They were too huge, and he's also been considered to be one of the largest extortionists. He extorted a lot of money, and he had hoarded a lot of money. Now, Akbar is called the economic reformist, but the truth is that he had ruined all of it. On the left hand side, you can see a table of Angus Maddison, the work, which is again quoted most of the times by everyone who wants to state that Mughals actually made India richer. Now you can look at the highlighted part of the table. This table is about the GDP per capita growth. Now you can see that within 1500 to 1820 AD, our GDP growth per capita is minus 0.01%. Before that, we never had ever had a negative GDP per capita growth. This speaks of a lot. This means that definitely the people were leading, not becoming richer, but the subjects were becoming poorer, because GDP per capita is about the amount of money what a capita or a subject owns. Now, looking at the economic aspect of Akbar, Irfan Habib mentions about forced productions by various people, including Asaf Khan, for their own financial benefits. He even talks about extortion and gives example of Shaista Khan and Prince Azimun Shan. This reference I am taking again from the Cambridge Economic History of India on page number 183. On the page number 183, Irfan Habib further goes on to give the account of money hoarding at large scale by Mughal emperors, including Akbar. He is quoting D. Light, who mentions that Akbar's treasure was around 522.4 million florins and Sarista Khan to have hoarded around rupees 380 million. So this idea of hoarding, or this concept of hoarding of money, is explaining you that why GDP per capita was getting capita growth was becoming negative. Though, as per the table of Angus Madison itself, our GDP share was not that low during Mughal, though it was a bit lower. It implies that though they were building the wealth for the Sultanate, the people were becoming more and more poor. Here I have not put that particular table of GDP share of India, but I will like to tell you about it orally. In 1580, our GDP per capita GDP share was 24.2%. This is when Mughal took over. Further, our GDP share depleted for the first time below China in 1600 AD. This was the time when when Akbar was the ruler of the Mughal Empire, or rather the ruler of India. So our GDP share depleted below China only under Mughal rule. This is something which we need to understand very clearly. Now, further going on to the aspect of Akbar suppressing the Shias and the Hindus. Not many people celebrate him as the secular, as I mentioned earlier too. But if I look at the primary sources, then again the story is very different. In the early years of his reign, Akbar suppressed Muslim sects that were condemned by the orthodoxy as heretical. It means that which was not considered very apt as per the Islamic rule of the Sunnis, they were considered heretical, and he used all kinds of suppressive measures, whatever could be possible from his side. If we look into the incidents of 1567, it is very interesting that on the advice of Sheikh Abu Nabi, he ordered the exhumation of Mir Murtaza Sharifi Siraji, a Shia buried in Delhi, for the graves in the proximity to that of Amir Khusro. It was because Amir Khusro was a Sunni and he didn't like a Shia to be buried close to Amir Khusro, Sunni Amir Khusro, who was more pious to Akbar. Akbar even goes on to suppress Madhavism, a phenomenon of Islam that time. In 1573, during his campaign in Gujarat, Madhavi leader Bandagi Mian Sheikh was arrested and brought in the chains to the court for debate and released after 18 months. So he was put in the jail though he came for the debate, but he was put across for 18 months in the jail. And I have again put across I'm sourcing it from Akbar and His India by Irfan Habib. Irfan Habib is an author. I believe that none of the Mughal fan club should even agree to disagree. In 1578, the Mughal Emperor Akbar famously referred to himself as Emperor of Islam, Emir of Faithful, Shadow of God on earth, Abul Faith Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar Badshah Ghazi. It is most wise and most God-fearing ruler. It is happening in 1578, and in the early 1580s, Din-e-Ilahi was formed. This speaks of two things. Akbar was very fond of being known as the Caliph or the leader of the Islam, and he was too much dedicated and looking to become a mass leader of the religions, or someone of a prophetic nature. So that is why actually Din-e-Ilahi had come into play. Now, if I go on to talk about the massacre of the Hindus, what Akbar had done, this is again a very long list. Massacre of Hindus of Gara in 1560 AD. This again I am referring from the Sage Encyclopedia of War, Social Science Perspective, edited by Paul Joseph, and this is widely accepted by almost all the historians. Abul Fazl is being quoted in that particular piece. He says that 48,000 Hindus were persecuted at the orders of Akbar. One may argue that, okay, soldiers were killed in the war, hence 8,000 Rajput warriors. But why Akbar killed 40,000 peasants? It was definitely for the hate for the Hindus and the jihadi trait or the Ghazi trait which he was carrying. Further, if I talk about the massacre of Gondwana, in 1564, Akbar conquered the Gondwana kingdom. The territory was ruled by Raja Veer Narayan, a minor, and his mother Durgavati, a Rajput warrior queen of the gods. Everyone knows about the Rani Durgavati, how bravely she had challenged Akbar. Later on, she commits Johar, and after her death in the Battle of Damoh, while Raja Veer was slain at the fall of Chauragarh, the mountain fortress of the Gond, the Mughals seized immense wealth and 1,000 elephants. Kamla Devi, the younger sister of Durgavati, was sent to the Mughal harem. This is again sourced out of medieval India from Sultanate to the Mughals, art by Satish Chandra. He's again a leftist historian, what people can call out. So I don't think even the Mughal fan club should disagree with Satish Chandra. Had Akbar been a man of morality, there was no point of sending out the younger sister of Durgavati to the Mughal harem, but he did so. And on the left side, you can see the snippet which I have sourced the things from. Now, further going on to understand about his persecution trait. Persecution at Nagarkot. Nizamuddin Ahmad records the violence during the conquest of Nagarkot, which is modern Himachal Pradesh, as follows. The fortress of Vun, which is an idol of Mahamai, was taken by the Muslim assailants. A party of Rajputs who had resolved to die fought till they were all cut down. Not only this, Akbar even goes on to kill 200 black cows belonging to the Hindus during the struggle, who had just crowded for the shelter in the temple. I just don't get a logic why 200 cows were to be killed that time. Then they took off their boots and filled them with the blood and cast it upon the roof and walls of the temple. This is a complete sign of bigotry, and whenever I read about it, and when I see the image of Akbar being considered as secularities, I just feel that how much falsification of history we will keep on doing. This I am sourcing it from, again, a very famous book, The History of India, as told by his own historians, The Mohammedan Period, Volume 5. How can we forget the siege of Chittor? Chittor reminds us of a lot of things. Many temples were destroyed. The shrine of Muhyiddin Chishti, the Ajmer, was presented with the brass candlesticks by Akbar, which were taken after the destruction of Kalika temple during the siege. September 57, Akbar left for Chittor, and on 20 October 1567, camped in the vast plains outside the fort. In the meantime, Rana Uday Singh, on the advice of his councils of advisors, decided to go away from Chittor to the hills of Gogunda with his family. Jaimal and Patta were left behind to defend the fort, along with 8,000 Rajput warriors and 1,000 musketeers under their command. Akbar laid the siege to the fortress, which lasted for 4 months. On 22 February 1568, Johar was committed in the house of Patta, Aisar Das and Sahib Khan. Next to the gates of the fort was opened, and Rajput soldiers rushed out to fight the enemies. In the ensuing battle, 8,000 Rajputs were killed, alongside 30,000 peasants. Now, during this period, also again sourcing it from Emperors of the Peacock Throne, the Saga of the Great Mughals by Abraham Irali. He says that, according to James Todd, Akbar had the Janeu of slain collected and weighed for estimate of killed. It weighed to around 200 kg. Now you can imagine, even if the data is a bit exaggerated, if it is not 200 kg, even if it was 100 kg, who on the earth tries to know about how many he has killed weighing the Janeu? Even if it had been 100 kgs of Janeu, the massacre toll was huge and huge. So though the official numbers don't speaks for it, but this just number put by James Todd speaks for it. Now, there were a lot of people who visited the courts of the great Mughal emperor. Let me quote Father Montserrat Acquaviva and the Enric, who had arrived at the Akbar's court in the early 1580. And the Montserrat recorded his journey in the travelogue comments that the religious zeal of Muslims had destroyed many Hindu temples. So temples were not being preserved, and he's recording it in 1580. When people do give a record that after the Ibadat Khana incidents of 1575, Akbar had become secular. But the record of 1580, what Montserrat puts across, gives a completely different account. Hindu temples were destroyed. In the place of temples, countless tombs and the shrines of Muslims have been erected in which these men were worshipped as if they were God. So these are have been sourced out of the commentary of the Father Montserrat. This is the book which I am quoting, and so Akbar had rewarded. This is again a very interesting incident. Akbar had rewarded Abd al-Qadir Badani with gold coins, who had committed of soaking his Islamic beard in Hindu infidel blood. The gesture of Badani had delighted Akbar, the great secularist. This is again sourced out of The Legacy of Jihad, Islamic Holy War, and the Fate of Non-Muslims, edited by Andrew G. Boston. Now, I have put across one screenshot of a tweet which I had replied long back to one of the person from Mughal fan club. She had said that East India Company in fact looted India. All our national treasures are lying in London. The Kohinoor is still there among the other national treasures, yet no outrage. Why? The Mughals remain in India and contributed to the building of the golden age of art and architecture. Now, I had replied this out in the tweet itself that it was Jahangir who had actually given the passage to the British in India. Mughals had passed on the Kohinoor through the generations. It was passed on through the generation after Humayun, then it passed on, and then it went on to Ranjit Singh, who later on during his deathbed wanted to donate to Jagannath temple. But it is same if it is in a Mughal crown or it is a British possession. It doesn't make any difference. I don't understand that it being passed on to the Mughal crowns day by day. How does it help India? And Mughals contributed to architecture. This is something very insane, and I don't find any cognizance to this kind of statement put across by anyone, because one needs to look at the great Kailasha temple and the rock cut architecture of India. They clearly speak about that we had much better architecture system than the Taj Mahal or any architecture which was created back then. Initially, it started off with the Taj Mahal. So this is the time when I think I should speak more about the Taj Mahal too. Taj Mahal was commissioned to be built in 1632, as I mentioned during the initial period of the talk, and rupees 4.18 crore silver rupees was put across to build Taj Mahal, and India witnessed the great Deccan famine that time. So it was not at all wise to build a royal mausoleum that time when whole of India was dying. So it was not a great decision. The stones of the stones that is a resource for Taj Mahal had come from the Indian soil itself. So again, I don't know what is the point of giving credit to Mughal. It was the Indian laborers who put on the effort to bring on the Taj Mahal. Again, I don't know what is the Mughal claim about. Only Mughal claim can be about the 7.4 million deaths which occurred at the cost of the great Taj Mahal being built. Now, I have so these are things which I have put across in the slide. Now there are few of the aspects which I will try to speak without the slides. So to start off with a bit about the Angus Maddison work, which is again very interesting and must be quoted. Angus Maddison work is interestingly, which is used by everyone through certain articles. When this whole debate started about Mughals made India richer, everyone started quoting some article from Economic Times, or someone would be quoting some article from The Scroll, some would be quoting from the article of Business Standard, and every article has some mention of Angus Maddison. So now if someone looks at the table of Angus Madison, then I told it initially too that it speaks about a GDP share, it speaks about a GDP per capita. If we look GDP share independently, then also it doesn't make a clear statement that Mughals made India richer. Even if we look at GDP per capita growth, this also never states that this made India richer. Now coming back to the GDP share of India, as per the GDP share statistics by Angus Madison, it was in 1000 AD when our GDP share was 32.4. In 1500, it further depleted, and in 1600 depleted below China. Now it was at a rise during the reign of Aurangzeb in 1700 AD. So they all tell that Aurangzeb made India richer because our GDP share was a bit higher, and it even jumped above China. There is an interesting point to be noted over here that there are primary sources which claim very strongly that Aurangzeb was known to be sending wealth to Mecca and Medina continually. And in fact, there are primary sources which even talk about Akbar sending out the wealth to Mecca and Medina continually. There is a famous physician who had visited the court of Aurangzeb, that is Francois Bernier. He mentions that he has again recorded it his own work, which is in form of a book. There he goes on to say that while the gold and silver were flowing in the Mughal court, the life of the peasants and the workers and the laborers were in disdain. So, if GDP share of India is higher during the Emperor Aurangzeb's reign, this statement of Francois Bernier that peasants' life were in disdain, the workers' life were in disdain, while the royals were building on the gold and wealth, it speaks aloud that yes, GDP share was higher and the GDP per capita growth was really low. So Mughal Sultanate's growth in terms of gold and silver cannot be considered as the growth of the Indian subjects at all. So again, coming back to the primary sources, in fact, when we look into the work of Abul Fazl even goes on to speak about Akbar sending out the wealth to Makkah and Medina. There have been also, initially I spoke about Babur was also busy sending out the wealth outside India, that is to his homeland and also to Makkah. So I don't know where even the question arises if the money was trying to help India or not. And in terms of massacres, in terms of being brutal to Indians, Mughals were no different to any other invaders of the past. Like even the most secular Akbar, if has to count on the number of people killed, weighing the weight of the Janev, it's really clearly explains the kind of brutality the Mughals were putting upon us. So I think that with this, I like to conclude my talk. I am open up for the questions if there are any.
Sabhas, I have a comment here.
Yeah.
You know, even if so two comments actually, the graph under Aurangzeb rose, and I think Sanjeev Sanyal, if I'm not wrong,
yeah,
or somewhere I've read, that was perhaps because of Hindvi Swarajya of Shivaji Maharaj, which is when the entire belt up to Tamil Nadu was under serious prosperity. That could have contributed to the rise. The second comment is that Aurangzeb died a pauper. There is absolute evidence that he had emptied all the treasury that he had inherited from the entire Mughals before him.
Yes.
How, with such serious war, can you ever make any country prosperous?
Actually, I like to quote Irfan Habib for this. If one picks the book of Cambridge Economic History of India, I am quoting it. I have deliberately chosen to pick the historians who even Mughal Club is very fond of. Irfan Habib clearly states that it was their zeal to win more and more wars, to conquer more and more. And the amount of extortions what the Mughals were onto, because of which a lot of business of Indians were destroyed completely. They were, in fact, the traders or the merchants during the Mughal Mughal rule, starting from Akbar, were so scared of the king and their men that they started hiding their money completely. They were not even showing that what their wealth is. They were forced to work more and more. They were forced to produce more and more for the Mughal benefit. There are even evidences stated by Irfan Habib that they used to take loans. The Mughals were always ready to take the loans, but loans were never returned to the merchants. So there was a very categorical step towards ruining the Indian economy. Merchants were not being sufficed with the basic rights. Money was being extorted from them. Loans were taken, not returned. The subjects were not given. The revenues were very high. Of course, jizya was there on the time of Aurangzeb, which was twice the zakat used to be. So there was a continuous subjugation of the Indian people in terms of economy. I have never seen a single instance where some growth would have kindled through any Mughal step.
This is about the Taj Mahal that you mentioned. That Taj Mahal was being built exactly when the Deccan famine was happening, right?
Yeah.
But actually, from purely economic and fiscal policy terms, the argument can be turned around, because whenever things like famine or natural disasters occur, governments all over the world, from ancient times to current times, always start building a lot of public buildings as a matter of providing employment, lasting employment, rather than putting people on a dole. Okay. So one could argue that building the Taj Mahal for 20 years, initiating it during the Deccan famine, was actually sound government policy. What do you say to that?
No,
I'm not saying the idea, but this is an argument.
Yeah, it can be absolutely taken as an argument. The very interesting point is that in terms of construction of a building, when the construction begins and to when the construction ends, there are a lot of stages which passes on through. In fact, Taj Mahal has also gone through a lot of stages of the construction. Interestingly, the famine had hit exactly in the same period when the project was commissioned. Now, the point is that 4.8 rupees, silver rupees, is already there with the empire, which is to be invested to the commissioned project. Now, you are talking about giving on to the employment. But the point is that when we already have enough of the wealth, first the wealth would be used to cherish the people with, to give, like even in the situation right now when we are facing COVID, though not everyone is able to work around, everyone is not able to reach to the workplaces. Government is trying to give certain kind of benefits, and we always seek that kind of benefits from the government too. So the argument should have been that, my argument is that instead of creating the employment opportunities that time, which already was there, I don't say that there was lesser employment opportunities. India had enough of employment because there were a lot of labor works which are going on apart from building Taj Mahal. Our economy was not hard before. So there was enough resources which were earned out of people by then. So why again force some kind of project and then say that, hey, we are trying to generate an economy? So it was not making any sense to me by then.
Thank you, Abbasji, for a wonderful presentation. It's sterling. Thank you for all the references. I am so excited that, I hope that this will be made available later, because I would like to share it with a lot of other people too. My specific questions have to do again with Taj Mahal. When I recently went to the Taj Mahal, I came across, because there was a very long queue, I came across a statement which said that there is an old Prachin Shiv Mandir. And there is, so that is one fact. The other fact was, when I was trying to find out more about the old Prachin Shiv Mandir, ancient Shiv Mandir, I understand from a bit of history that I know I'm not a history person. I understood that this is a land which was given to or appropriated by Shah Jahan, or the group before that, from I think it was Raja Jai Singh, who was a nephew of Raja Man Singh.
Yes.
It was his property and it was taken and appropriated by Shah Jahan. So
Yes.
That is the second fact. The third fact is that I understand from the history books of school that he cut off the hands of the laborers who worked, or the artisans who worked on the Taj Mahal, so that it cannot be replicated elsewhere. And the fourth fact, which has recently emerged in some conversation somewhere on a social network, that Shah Jahan was planning to build a black Taj Mahal of black marble on the other side of the river Yamuna. But if he had cut off everybody's hands, how could he have replicated a black Taj Mahal? So there are so many, disjointed facts which people are talking about. Can you just, have you done any research in this area?
See, the first aspect is that which arises about whether Taj Mahal being built upon a Shiv temple or not. Now, there's a very famous book of P.N. Oak which gives a complete account of history of the Taj Mahal, and it has a lot of references about it being built upon the Shiva temple. Now, I have personally not come across very strong evidences so far because our archaeological department has also not dug much into it. If there is so much fuss about it, there is no point holding it back. One digging or one checking out at the archaeological level can sort out all the issues. If if you remove a carpet, a lot of dust will come across, and we should be ready to take up the dust. So history owes to none but to the fact itself. So I will like to make a very assertive comment on it only when I look at the archaeological evidences at my own. I will not take a claim. I will not take a assertive note on this that yes, it was built on a Shiva temple, but there is sources in P.N. Oak's book. But at the same time, I will like to look into the archaeological evidences for it. Now, government should look into do some archaeological researches onto it. Coming to the second aspect of it, that yes, the land was given by Jai Singh, and that's why I said that it was all the resources of India upon which the Taj Mahal were built upon. Coming to the third fact, that whether the hands of the people were chopped or not, yes, again, I have not come. There are stories, there are chronicles which run around over there. I personally have not come across the very strong primary sources which vouch for it, but it is very much feasible. It might have happened if the ancestor of Shah Jahan, Akbar, goes on to count the number of people by waking the Janeeu. It speaks of the brutality which this clan was carrying with them. So this might have also happened, but I again, as a historical researcher, will like to go deeper into the primary sources. Without primary sources, I will not make a claim for it. Further, about the black Taj Mahal, black replica of the Taj Mahal, which was supposed to be built. This is stated in primary sources too, that he wanted it to come across. So this, as you yourself said, that these 2 points kind of contradicts that if he would have chopped off the hands of the people, then how this black Taj Mahal would have been erected. So about the black Taj Mahal, I have come across the primary source. I have not come across the primary source based on the chopping of the hand, but I have a belief that this might have also been feasible. So I think that this answers the question which you had raised.
Thanks for a wonderful session. My question is, why aren't we able to destroy the left liberals or fake narrative of Mughals building upon? And now also, likes of director and other people are creating fake narratives on them. And my second question is regarding Taj Mahal, which just now you discussed. There is a YouTuber, Mr. Praveen Mohan, who has done a video on Taj Mahal, and he has seen that the underground of the Taj Mahal is in closed and it's not allowed to open. Why is that so? Thank you.
Yeah, the first aspect about the fake narrative is that, at times it happens that one who says the narrative needs to prove it first. The primary sources are crying aloud that there is nothing as such that Mughals made India richer or glorified India. They were just another plunderer, and no difference to be lesser barbaric. They were as barbaric as the earlier one, and there shouldn't be even a question that whether Mughals were less barbaric or more barbaric. Barbaric is barbaric. If you kill one, it's done. It's enough to. And they have killed so many innocent souls who were not even onto the war. They have they killed 40,000 peasants, they killed 30,000 peasants in respective siege of the places. So there's no point to glorify Mughals, and rather the proof should come from the other side. That is why I have put across the challenge to anyone to prove to me or to anyone that Mughals made India richer. Now, coming back to that, how this narrative can be broken. This narrative can be easily broken if we start calling out the people who are chanting the names of Akbar the Ghazi as a secularist, Babur as a secularist. I missed down to talk about the jihadi aspect of Babur today, but Baburnama asserts of his jihadi nature too. We just need to quote the primary sources, and I'm not sure if the government will be taking cognizance of it right now or not, because there are a lot of lacunas on the side of HRD where a lot of things needs to be fixed. Unless those things get erased from the textbook, NCERT book to be precise, the things won't start becoming very clear and correct. And we will have to also assert this fact that, when you are calling out the names of the Mughals, the Khalji, you are not talking about a sect of the Muslim. Mughals or Khalji don't represent the Muslim that way. So even the Muslim people should not get worried about someone blaming on the Mughals, or really rather calling out the truth of the Mughals or calling out the truth of the Khalji. No one should be baffled, because once you are trying to, get baffled, if someone is bringing out the fact about Akbar or Khalji or anyone for that matter, it speaks that you are somehow trying to connect yourself with that, which necessarily should not be. History should be very clear and transparent. And coming back to the aspect of Praveen Mohan's video, yes, I have not been able to go through that video so far, but I will still stress upon that if there are so many evidences, if there are so many talks going about, ASI should take cognizance of it, do a digging, get across with the fact, it will be settled for all. Let the carpet be rolled up, and it's okay if the dust comes across. No one can go on to glorify Hitler onto any podium in Germany, though Germany was a place of Hitler. Here we are trying to glorify someone, Akbar, we're trying to glorify Jahangir, we are trying to glorify Aurangzeb, when we have got an Aurangzeb fan club too. But Aurangzeb was the most fanatic of all. So we will need to disassociate religion from those clans or the invaders and look history very objectively. Let history flow the way it is. Let facts have the only the onus to history and nothing else. Thank you.
Sir, I have a question, two questions I have. First question is, how can the cover or the graveyard can be termed as a mahal? Because when I visited Taj Mahal, I did not find anything extraordinary, basically. And second question is, why can't a movie can be built on this? Because when I saw the old movie, it was glorifying all the Mughal Azam in that. Just if you can reply me. Thank you.
Yeah, see, first aspect, can you please repeat the question? I just missed it.
I don't know what the first question really was. It was more a comment about that, how can it be a mahal, basically?
Oh, yeah, but I believe that it was more about the aesthetics. It was no so beautiful or aesthetically pleasing so that it can be so much glorified. I believe that was the question about.
Yes.
Because he spoke about him visiting the place and found that it's just an ordinary place or something like that.
Yes.
So, being an architect, I have a complete different perspective on Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is a very gigantic structure, and it is built out of Makrana marble, which is very cold in the heat of Agra, and is built on the principle of symmetry. In architecture, we have a concept that when you don't know anything, you use symmetry, and because symmetry always looks beautiful, naturally, anything that occurs naturally is not symmetric. Everything is asymmetric. Whether you look at your hand or everything is asymmetric, not actually symmetric. When you look at if you look hands separately, if you look at legs separately, symmetry doesn't work. So symmetry is always a tool of someone who is lacking in the sense of design. Now coming back to the architecture part of the Taj Mahal, it is built out of Makrana marble, very cold in nature. When you walk onto the Makrana marble in the heat of Agra, you feel a lot of peace. and the monumental scale and the core, what you achieve out of the stone itself, give you a great relief, and somehow it carries a quotient of being, pleasing or somewhat a good architecture. But there is nothing so great or extravagant which has gone into build Taj Mahal even. We have better engineering feat also. And I don't consider it as a good architecture because its architecture led to your disdain or death of around 7.4 million people, the Deccan famine. So I, being an architect, don't consider anything to be a great architecture which has led nothing to human quotient or the human values.
Hi Abbas, thank you so much for this wonderful session. So my quick question is like, what are the primary sources to read, which can give a good amount of details with this, this all Mughal kingdoms and all that stuff. So
I see the primary thing which we also start reading is the Angus Madison's work itself, because it's very important to know that how India was becoming richer or poor. And though Angus Madison's works also is based on certain kind of assumptions, but that is the subject or the topic which everyone quotes to prove whether Mughal were richer or whatever. Apart from that, one needs to look into Babarnama, the text of Babur himself, Ain-e-Akbari, all the works of Abul Fazl, and don't miss to read about the work of Irfan Habib's Akbar and his India. Also, I will recommend to read about the Cambridge Economic History of India by Irfan Habib. And S.M. Ikram's book on the Muslim civilization is a very important book to read. So once we start reading about these texts, the things will start becoming transparent. Who can be better source to know about Babur than Babur himself? Who can be better source to know Akbar than from his words, which comes through Abul Fazl himself? So we need to concentrate on the direct sources or the primary sources to bring upon the fact, not any kind of juxtaposition like I spoke about G.N. Sharma, that how he had cooked up the story of Rana Sanga inviting Babur, which he himself is unable to establish in his book. So even critical analysis of just 3 paragraphs of G.N. Sharma's book, critical analysis I say, will bust whole of the myth. So a good analysis, analytical look at the any text which is put across, get the primary sources of Babarnama, Akbarnama, Angus Madison's work, and then the things will be resolved.
It's just that, first of all, I was entirely surprised by the focus of your lecture, because if you talk about the Mughal contribution to Indian economy, I thought you would concentrate more on the settled reigns of Akbar to Aurangzeb, where there was some kind of empire, whether you like it or not. So, I mean, that would have been the period, rather than dwelling so much on Babur, who was anyway a wanderer. We know that he was wandering all over Central Asia. He lost kingdoms, he gained kingdoms. I mean, you couldn't find much about economy. He would have been scraping a living himself. Then, secondly, this charge of bigotry was actually overplayed, because I mean, that doesn't have much to do with the economy per se, unless it involves sending money outside. So, for instance, you could take temple wealth, and if you started building some dam with the temple wealth, you are actually redistributing money that had been locked up, which is the current argument now, right? So, these are the kinds of things that we should address. And I mean, I don't want to go into this bigotry aspect anyway, but Badayuni, actually in the later years, he finds that Akbar has done turned around, and he's a different person altogether. But besides that, there is this critical issue of Angus Madison's work being quoted all the time. What I'm not seeing anywhere is a critical analysis of Angus Madison's own sources, and whether those comparisons of GDP of Rome versus India are actually tenable or not. Can you direct me to some sources which will do that kind of comparison and critical analysis of Angus Madison? Because everybody is quoting Angus Madison these days.
Yes. So I will start off with that, why focus more on Babur and why not on the later period. First, it's really important to understand that why Mughals came to India. And the whole narrative is about, though you were stating that we all know that Mughals are the wanderer, but the Mughal fan club is not ready to accept it. They have a saying that Babur was in India to build an empire, and he did a lot of good to the nation, India as a nation. it's very critical to understand that Babur was not betrayed by Rana Sanga, because this is again a myth which is surmounted, which comes out as a blame upon the Indians that they invited the plunders upon them, which is not true. Second aspect is that Babur himself set a precedent when I spoke about that when he conquered the Samarkand, he was giving a lot of favors to the Beg of Samarkand itself. So it further continued throughout the Mughal clan, whether it was Akbar giving it the royalties to the Rajputs or whether it was Jahangir. Everyone followed the concept of what Babur had initiated with. Babur idea of extortion of the wealth, the way he's, and yes, he was also sending out wealth outside India. It started from that period. When he sends it out the gifts to Afghanistan, he sends out gift to Samarkand, he sends out gift to Kandahar and elsewhere. He also speaks about that why Mughals, it was important for the Mughals to set the footing in India. It starts off with explaining that the ruined empire, or rather a very weak or weakest of one of the empires of that period, from the region where they come from, had to do something from India. This again is very much underestimated and never spoken about. That there's not very strong argument against that why Mughals stayed back in India. So this completely breaks the myth of it. Yes, I do understand that I should have dwelled more into the reign of. In fact, this should have gone completely as a critical analysis of Akbar's reign, then to Humayun a bit, then to Akbar, and then further on and on to Jahangir, and in fact till Bahadur Shah Jafar, because there are a lot of stories that what happened after 1780. Because after 1780, as Irfan Habib says, that the merchants were so scared of the Mughals that they started hiding their wealth, and they stopped doing business to a great extent because they used to take the loan and never returned it back. There was a lot of extortion which was done by Akbar. There was a lot of extortion which was done by Jahangir. There was a lot of extortion which was done by Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb did a lot of extortion. And they sent, yes, it's a myth that I stated this also, that they didn't send out wealth outside India. Akbar himself, Akbar in fact had sent out wealth to Makkah and Medina 4 times. Then Aurangzeb sent out the wealth. That wealth also has been accounted in the primary source. That number is also too huge compared to the GDP of India that time. So again, this is not the case that they were not sending out the wealth. Yes, I do take the point that more stress should be laid upon what the later Mughals did, and perhaps this should have been. I look to do more extension of it in the next talk too, if it is feasible. I think that I missed on. I critically wanted to explain a bit about Angus Maddison too, because those data are very important to understand. And going back to his one more question that he asked, that whether there is some critical analysis of the Angus Maddison's work or not. So first aspect that why it is important to go through the Angus Maddison's work is that right now there is no other economic studies to do some base referencing of the GDP analysis. Now, how much relevant it is or how much not relevant it is, it again comes down to what other primary sources are talking along with them. Like Angus Maddison's data says that in 1600 AD, our GDP share depleted for the first time below China. Babur was on the whole prospect of conquering. A lot of wealth was being invested on a lot of wars that time. So a lot of revenue is going on to the wars. Though the primary sources of Akbarnama is not talking about what money is going on to the war, but it has to be understood that yes, a lot of revenue is invested into the war, and which has been addressed by Irfan Habib in his book Cambridge Economic History of India, where he gives an account of how much money was going on to the wars. Now, also coming on to the aspect of 1700 AD, and you had also stressed upon about the Marathas were making economy better. That time, also the people who visited the court of Aurangzeb, I stated that they are clearly mentioning about the status of the Mughal royalties. They are building upon the gold and silver while the peasants are in disdain. This very strongly speaks about why there was a negative GDP growth rate. And also it speaks about, yes, GDP share had increased a bit in 1780. Irfan Habib further goes on to even says about there's a whole 2 chapters where he discusses that how economy of India started depleting after 1700 AD. So most of the people, Mughal fan club, have this opinion that because Marathas had taken over, so Marathas were the one who were depleting it. But Irfan Habib has a very different story to say. So though I cannot cite any critical analysis of Angus Madison's work because I have not come across so far, but I will definitely dig into it. On the other hand, I will ask everyone to read Angus Madison's table along with the historical incidences which were occurring as per the diaries of Francois Berny, who visited Aurangzeb's court, according to the diary of Mazaret, who visited the court of Akbar. They are speaking about the status of the court and the status of the people. So we can draw out a logic, a bit of logical analysis can make us understand that whether Angus Madison's works are right or not.
Hi, thank you, Abbas, for a wonderful session. My question is, put together all the Mughal emperors, how many, can we differentiate between how many people are killed in the war and how many were killed in religious persecution or conversion point of view? Like, can we draw the distinction from the primary sources? And if so, what will be the number according to you?
Only primary sources we have right now is all the namas and which talks about the emperors themselves. Like Babar Nama talks about Babar, Aine Akbari talks about Akbar, and so all these sources have given a certain amount of estimate. So what actually, and it's a very famous saying, everyone knows that until the history has been written from the own people, it will always be glorifying the invaders or the hunters rather. So they have been on the process to glorify themselves too. But yes, like Abul Fazl clearly states that when in Chittor he killed 30,000 peasants. So like that, there are many incidences where Akbarnama itself is speaking about how many persons he has killed in various sieges and all the wars. Now the distinction has to be made on this analysis that I'm sure that this will not be a very apt one, but we can differentiate with how many soldiers were killed and how many civilians were killed. Because I don't see a point why an emperor needs to kill 200 cows, what Akbar did. This doesn't make any sense. Akbar was not, cows were not there running behind Akbar with their horns. So no point killing the cows. Further, there are many incidences where Babar is citing about the pagans and the Hindus of India, the massacre too. He has clearly explained in the volume 1 of the translation, we can read about it. Then massacre done by Aurangzeb is completely stated in his own autobiography. So they will speak aloud for the numbers. We did not dwell anywhere else. But yes, the exact number is very tough to come across. There are very exaggerated memes also which run around about 400 million or so. I don't believe that is the number. But yes, some accounting needs to be done. I have not done the accounting exercise.
Abbas ji, bahut namaskar, and thank you so much to bringing the the history which which I was not aware of, and thank you so much to bringing lots of things. And this is going to be a big fight for all of us to bring the right thing, because I being from NCERT board, I know हमेशा क्वेश्चन पूछा जाता है अकबर की खूबियां बताइए, औरंगजेब की खूबियां बताइए, but I don't know what government is putting an effort to bring all these things into in the right bring the right history in front of our students. Plus आपने mention किया था Mughal has destroyed lots of temple. Yeah. You being a part of archaeological, and you might have some exposure towards what is government thinking and what is their roadmap to rebuild those temples, because today we know those has been destroyed, so we still have the opportunity to rebuild it. So do you know what government is thinking about this? Like Ayodhya, Ram Janmabhoomi, we all are aware of that, but apart from this, we have many other temples. And any clue which can help us to think that really the government is doing something towards that?
Thank you so much. Yes, a lot of temples were destroyed, and a lot of religious persecutions had happened even under Mughal, and it cannot go under the garb of any literature festival or anywhere where Mughals are glorified. as far as the temples, accounting of the temple, what happened to them, and what can be the due process. First, if one needs to know about how many temples were destroyed, I will recommend the work of Sitaram Goel for everyone to look at, where he speaks about the accounted for the temples destroyed. And it all will arise with a bit of awakening, because it all starts with the idea that if we can have a museum for the Jews, what happened to the Jews. We have got a whole museum designed by Daniel Leviskind, a beautiful museum, where if you go across and you can feel the pain of the Jews, the way it has been architectured. So it all needs to start off with the recognizing the fact that yes, the persecution of Hindus had happened, and there should not be any shame for any government body or academic body to address this. We need to have a kind of museum too. I do believe in a concept that we should speak about the kind of persecutions which had happened. The whole thing needs to put across using all the data whichever we have applicable. But as far as the government's call is concerned to do restore the temples, I will not like to speak much about on the part of government, because I am not at all a spokesperson of government. But I definitely expect from them that yes, recognition of our temples must happen. They must recognize that whatever wrong had happened. And as everyone speaks about that, it's not about religions, it's rather about the history, that if something has gone wrong with a particular community, it needs to be addressed. There is no harm in addressing it. I said earlier too that you can't go on to glorify Hitler in Germany, though he was from Germany and he persecuted the Jews. So first of all, the first exercise would be to stop glorifying of the marauders, the killers, the Mughals in this case. The second step would be to recognize that the disasters, what they had done, it can start off with the economic disasters. Then further we can speak about the religious persecutions which they had done, and then we can also, under religious persecution, we can also talk about the temples. So this should be a step-by-step process. It will not just happen on just one fine day. It will begin with the recognition that yes, Mughals were no secularities and they were just another invader.
I have a comment here. So we had Praful Goradia ji, who actually had written a book called Hindu Masjids, and his talk is available on our channel. You all may want to go look it up. It's a very old book, I think written in 1980s, and he gave a lecture recently on it, a short lecture. During that, he pointed out Sir Arnold Joseph Toynbee, when he was in India, he having mentioned that the Gyanvapi Masjid, which was built after breaking Kashi Vishwanath temple by Aurangzeb, the fact that even after partition we have that masjid should be considered a matter of national dishonor. This is a Britisher telling us this, or whatever, American, I don't know who he was, Sir Arnold Joseph Toynbee. And so it was very stark comment that Praful Goradia ji mentioned during his lecture, that we as a nation have no recognition of this. To complete the point, Arup ji, that all temples, all broken temples are taken over by ASI, whether they were desecrated or intentionally. They have a lot of masjids over them. So, I mean, they're officially archaeological sites and are now masjids. For example, the entire Qutub Minar complex is all a masjid complex right now. And so it's an ASI, under ASI control. All ASI temples all over the country, you cannot even offer puja. So it will actually serve the nation big things if we were to put some citizen pressure and start reopening temples where worship can start, which are under control of ASI. For example, temples in Khajuraho, they're scattered all over the country. In Bateshwar, in Madhya Pradesh, all under ASI, worship is not allowed. Only villagers come in and offer some pushpam or some jal on a Shivratri. But I mean, if this can be done, it will be a huge national service, to be honest. Sorry for taking your talk away, Abhas.
No, that's absolutely, I completely agree with this, because the fact needs to be accepted in whatever merit it comes. Fact doesn't have any colors of...
I mean, to his comment on whether the government is retelling the history, very, very unfortunate that just before the second term of the Modi government, Prakash Javadekar went on record saying that We have not even changed a comma in history textbooks,
Yes.
as if he was going to get a pat from NDTV, and I don't know who he wants a pat from. Unfortunate.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
So if you allow, I would be responding in 1 minute to Mr. X, because he has raised a very, it looks like very critical kind of thing. So can I?
Yeah, of course, sure.
Okay, so he raised this point of public spending to boost the economy, right? I'm really surprised that how can this public spending to build a mausoleum, right, which will be generating no revenue, how actually that would be helping people dying in hunger, in famine, right? The famine, which was in one way or another, would have been basically created by the state itself, by tax collecting authorities in a way, because droughts are natural but famine are artificial, as far as I know, right?
Yeah.
So I really don't think that his arguments really put a lot of weight here. Second point of this famine was in South India, not in North India.
Yeah.
And Taj Mahal was being constructed in North India, so ultimately it was really not very much helpful as far as this point is concerned. By the way, yeah, coming back to the
also means that this part of, South India was not under Mughal rule at all in any case.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so now coming back to my question. So my question is, Abhash, you are quoting same primary sources which most of the traditional historians use, right?
Yes.
From the left lobby. So I'm a little surprised that there have been some historians from having this alternate point of view, as against these leftist historians, right? But why there are not many books available on the public forum, right, quoting the same references and taking the alternate view?
And because this point has been raised, I will not shy of taking the name, because this all started with Mr. Javed Akhtar getting into debate with Tariq Fateh. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Javed goes on to glorify the Mughals and appreciate Khalji even. But then I put across the whole challenge that if anyone can come across and prove that Mughals made India richer, forget about Khalji, because if one starts digging into the primary sources, one who is appreciating Khalji so much will be ashamed of even the statement, because Khalji was a big time marauder. Now, it's interesting that they have been asking that which historians, which books have you read? So when I go on to say that, I am trying to quote Irfan Habib, I am trying to quote S.M. Ikram, I am trying to quote Babur himself, I am trying to quote Akbar himself. Now, then again they will come, no, but this article from Scroll says this. So the point is that while I had put across this tweet also, while Akbar addressed himself to be Ghazi, he wanted to be known as Ghazi, but our secularists will say that, hey Akbar, you are wrong. Please don't call yourself Ghazi, you are secularist. Just give away with the primary sources, give away with Akbarnama. We don't believe in that. So this whole discourse of rejecting the primary source is very dangerous, because it's not about a particular religion or the faith, but it's rather about the facts. Facts needs to come out the way it is. If Babur is interested to be known as a person serving to Islam, why shame it out? And today again, today morning I was going to Babarnama again. Then while going again and again, I found that Babur's story is very interesting to read. It's very fascinating. So when his story is so fascinating, then why people don't go into the every aspect of his fascination, where he has got a fascination even to kill the pagans. He has got fascination to even destroy the Hindu faith of India. He quotes it in Babarnama itself. He himself is talking about how poor he had become, the poverty and humiliation what he was going through in Tashkent. So these sources, when just brought up, they will just silence these people and everyone all around in one go. We need to come up with the primary sources who are on the side of history. I will not say the side of against Mughal or pro-Mughals, but who are on the side of history should come up with the primary sources. They ask, again, quote the primary source, let them come on to the debate if they are at all ready. The things will settle down. The dust will settle down.
When in the primary source, they always refer to Babur as a Mongol.
Yeah.
So the first question is, at what point does a Mongol become a Mughal? Or is there just a kind of a corruption in the term Mongol to Mughal? The second has to do with a conversation which I had with a classmate who is Pakistani, and this is when I was in school in the US. And I just generally mentioned that, most Pakistanis have Indian blood, Rajput blood, and Rajput DNA. And he said that no, he is of original Mughal lineage. My specific question is that in Babarnama, is there a reference to his entire family and, harems and all coming into India? And is there a separate Mongol Mughal lineage which comes down from Babur? Or is it just that there are a lot of marriages and so on, like how Akbar is he has a Hindu wife and so on. So this is my question. Two questions.
Again, the primary source for this is Babarnama. And when Babur starts describing his story, right from the page 1 of Babarnama itself, he says that he talks about the Mongols of Samarkand, and he further goes on to talk about his brawl with them, where he is trying to conquer Samarkand because it belonged to Timur long back and he wanted to get it back. And he also talks about the Mongol tribes in and around to the place. He has always quoted them as their enemies. But later on, it also builds upon the narrative that he carries and takes a lot of help from the people from the Samarkand. He was getting a lot of help from the Beg of Samarkand. He was getting a lot of help from people of Kabul. He was getting a lot of help from people from all the other places. So he never had a very concentrated, or in terms of the secularities, if I want to say, his whole army or the people who followed Babur were mixed of different places. It was not a very concentrated race which was carrying forward with him. Because as mentioned by Farishta himself or anyone else, he was a king with no kingdom. He was just like a king of a chessboard who just keeps on, moving on to the board here and there. Yes, he did come to India with his people, but it's definitely, and I am no one to question if someone is, trying to make a claim that he comes from Mughal lineage. Perhaps he may be or might not be, but the whole narrative boils down to this: that yes, Mughals were not great to the number. They had come with a very lesser train of people, as per Babarnama. And then he started associating with the people from when he was in Kabul. He associated with the people in Kabul. When he comes to when he further enters to the northwestern of India, he kinds of makes association of the people over there. So it was all the association which was carrying forward with Babur as per Babarnama. It was not a particular tribe or the lineage which really carried forward.
Sunitaji, many Pakistanis also acknowledge that they actually to date carry Rajput roots, and they acknowledge that also. These days, it's very simple. Just get $100 DNA test and we'll know where their origins are. Okay, so there's one last question coming in from Jagannathji. Is there any Indian writer as primary source during that time other than Mughal records? I'm guessing that's a question.
There can be, but I have not personally come across any Indian so far, because whatever sources I have referred are only the namas of the people, and later on people like Farishta, Abul Fazl, and so I don't have an eye upon it. If at all, there may be.